no numbers, there's no pictures, there's no videos, there's no gameplay. I don't like it.
Yo, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope everyone's having a good day. So for our 2-day Freemers, we are back with another Palia video. This time around, we're going to be talking about the future of Palia and the whole Daybreak Games acquisition. I was really flustered, really lost for words when we went over the article. Dude, let me just say this. I've never been pissed off at Singularity 6. They're a newer company. I've had no reason to be mad at them. They've been doing great things with Palia, right? There have been, obviously the layoffs, that's, but that's to be expected in the industry. It wasn't something I was super concerned about until this. So, dude, at this point, I am very mad at Singularity 6, as the whole community should be. This is kind of an awful thing that they've gone and done. The whole point of this video, we're going to be talking about not only the acquisition, but I want to talk about Daybreak Games in general, because I don't think a lot of you know what kind of company Daybreak Games is, or where they started, or how they got to where they are. You guys don't know the history of Daybreak Games probably like the rest of the Free Realms community does, like I do. I've known this company for 10 years, and I don't like the company at all. I never have. I've always hated the company. You know what? I thought maybe I'll give them a chance when they drop their new game, and we'll talk about that. But obviously that crashed and burned. Yeah, man, this is we still don't know the whole outcome of this whole acquisition. We don't know what's going to happen because we still have yet. Usually we get an update per month. When we see that update come out, we're going to see the outcome of this whole acquisition pretty quickly. We're going to see what Singularity 6 is going to add. It's probably going to be heavily microtransactions and not a lot of actual content. That's what I'm expecting, me personally. But regardless, we're going to just go ahead and jump into this. I want to dive in, man, because there's a lot to cover, and I'm more composed this time around, but it's just a whole mess. And strictly put, I want to talk about Daybreak Games and how they started. So let's just dive into that whole thing. So Daybreak Games explained. So a lot of you don't know where Daybreak Games probably came from or how the company even started. So originally Daybreak Games, if you actually look up Sony Online Entertainment, let me just type it in, what comes up is Daybreak Games Company, which is Daybreak Games. So how Daybreak Games started was off of the bones of Sony Online Entertainment. So back in 2014, Sony Online Entertainment was shutting down. They were shutting down because, well, for the most part, they ran out of money. Funny enough, because Singularity 6 went to Daybreak Games for money. We'll get into that. But yeah, Daybreak Games was formed off of the bones of Sony Online Entertainment. And it wasn't too long after we found out that not only was Free Realms shutting down, but 3 other games along with it. This is what the main thing I want to talk about is what Daybreak Games did from the bones of SOE. So, 4 games got shut down for 1 game. Okay, and ignore the little G that isn't capitalized. We're not fixing that. But so, Free Realms, Star Wars The Clone Wars Adventures, Vanguard Saga Heroes, and Wizardry Online all got shut down. All 4 of them were MMOs. I think the 2 most popular ones were Free Realms and Star Wars The Clone Wars Adventures. I played both of them. Didn't play Vanguard Saga Heroes and didn't play Wizardry Online. Didn't know those were games. I'm not going to lie. When I looked it up, I didn't know they were games because I only recognized the first 2. But 4 games were shut down for 1 game. And in the aftermath of those getting shut down, H1Z1 was made. Now, just to give you guys an idea of what H1Z1 was, because I have explained in the past for the Freemers here, but for those who don't know what H1Z1 is, it was basically, to start, it was a great game. Like, when it first came out, it was phenomenal. Because H1Z1 had, the perfect mix of 2 different game types. It had a survival mode where you could survive against zombies, build your bases. It was basically like PvE, like survival craft. It was fun. was a fun time. It was great, and I loved playing with the community there, and you got to build, like, bases on top of building. It was fun. It was a fun time. And then, of course, there was the other side of it, which I'm pretty sure H1Z1 wasn't the first one to do it, but they had it a Battle Royale mode where you could fight against players, fight against zombies. It was a fun time. Until they got a little crazy, and I only have 2 images here, but I am going to explain the rest to you guys. So, over time, H1Z1 evolved, or should I say devolved. H1Z1, from just its basic name, turned into Just Survive, which they split the PvE mode and the PvP mode into 2 separate game types on Steam. So there was H1Z1 Just Survive and H1Z1 King of the Kill. King of the Kill was the Battle Royale mode. Just Survive, obviously, the PvE survival craft. And then, of course, they shut down the Just Survive because not enough people were playing it. Gee, you split up the games and you wonder why. And then, of course, they changed the name from King of the Kill to Z1 Battle Royale. Then, of course, this is how they killed their own game. Now, I've heard from, I don't know if it's accurate information. Someone says H1Z1 is still online to this day, and I do not believe that. But apparently, Daybreak just has a lot of dying titles that are somehow still kicking dust. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. But what I do know is that Z1 used to be a good game. It was off the bones of SOE's downfall, and surprisingly, not surprisingly at all, Daybreak Games killed their own game and put it in the ground. I don't know what they were doing. I really don't. Because if they just kept it H1Z1, it would have still been up. I probably still would have had respect for Daybreak Games. But at this moment, I do not. I hate the company to the core. Probably hate them more than most of the standard video game companies. But regardless, that's the whole story of H1Z1 and how it is where it is now. It's in a garbage can. But let's move on to the next point here. What we know due to the acquisition? Well, we know a lot. We know for a fact that Palia was about to shut down. We don't know how soon it was going to shut down, but we do know it was close. The layoffs were kind of the first sign, although I didn't think anything of it because I thought, okay, these things happen. It's normal. It's not like an out-of-the-blue type of thing. Layoffs happen in the industry. We know that. What we didn't know was that the game was close to shutdown, and so was Singularity 6. They were running out of money, and I'm pretty sure, like, if I were to look this up, how much money did Singularity 6, I can't type it today, have. So they raised a total funding of $49 million over 3 rounds. Its first funding round was on September 13th, 2018. Its latest funding round was a Series B. So they had around, like, they had a lot of money. They had roughly like $79 million. Like, if you look at the company profile, they were not really an indie company. They made a lot of money. Like, there was a lot of investors, right? Like, total, I mean, I don't know if we're going to find out the exact amount of money they've made. Total funding, it says $49 million. So they're a $50 million company if you were to round it out. They've made a lot of money over the past 6 years. So to know man, listen, if any of us had $50 million, you're not going to spend that over 6 years. You're going to save that money. Like, live service titles are super hard to make because it's just like a huge project to take on, and you need a ton of money to be able to do it. This is the issue that Singularity 6 just went through. Because clearly, I just want to point this out, clearly, Singularity 6 didn't know what they were doing. You know, props to Aiden, the game director, for, you know, putting on a good show, but I don't think he knew what he was doing with a live service title if he was spending money like that. Like, obviously, there's so much I don't know about the inside and out of the game industry, but, like, I don't know how $50 million goes away like that for what kind of game Palia is and how much is actually in the game. There's so much I don't know in the inside of everything, but that's a lot of money to go through, and the game was about to shut down. That, to me, is mind-boggling, but that's something we do know, is that the game was going to shut down. Okay? So moving on to the next thing here, YS6 went to Daybreak Games for help. I can't type, sorry. I'm a mess today. So the reason Singularity 6 went to Daybreak Games for help and not to any other studio, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, could have gone to any other studio, because I mean, they have Palia on the Switch, right? They could have gone to any other company. Why did Singularity 6 go to Daybreak Games specifically? Well, I'll talk about it in another video because I think it's pretty interesting. But there's so many nods to Free Realms in Palia, especially with all the updates they've been putting out. The fact that they went to Daybreak Games for help shows someone at Singularity 6 knew Daybreak Games, like, personally, or that they know that Daybreak Games was Sony Online Entertainment at one point and worked on Free Realms. I'm telling you, coincidence? I think not, dude. Like, Singularity 6 went to Daybreak Games because they know about Free Realms. They know what kind of games Sony Online Entertainment worked on. And they thought, oh, this company will help us because they worked on a game like Palia. Well, they didn't. Daybreak Games is a completely new company. It's not Sony Online Entertainment. It's completely different. It's just a whole thing. And I think it's not a coincidence, dude. Like, Singularity 6 knows what Daybreak Games did, you know? But, I mean, for me personally, I mean, they needed money, obviously. That's the obvious thing. But I don't think Daybreak Games or Enad Global 7 has the money to fund a live service game when they themselves don't have one. If they do have one, it's probably dying. So, I don't know, man. Me specifically, they went to Daybreak Games because of Free Realms. I'm just saying that because it's true. It is true, man. It's I don't know what else to say other than that, because they could have gone to any other company, but they probably did. I don't know if they like put out like feelers. They were like, you know what, these guys will help us, right? No, they probably wouldn't. I imagine like a lot of game developers probably don't want to help a live service title, or an indie company for that matter. I wouldn't call them indie, but they don't want to help them because it costs a lot of money. It's such a cost heavy thing, is a live service title. So Singularity 6 is probably, I feel like Singularity 6 is going to be the company that I lose faith in, like Daybreak Games, like they did with H1Z1. This is a mess, man. And if Palia goes under, I mean, we have to wait for Free Realms Sunrise to come out, man. That's a crazy thought, man. What a roller coaster. But anywho, let's move on to the next point here. What Daybreak Games controls with Singularity 6 and Palia? So it's obvious, and if you don't know, you should. But basically, Daybreak Games controls all the funding. They control the financials. They control everything financially within Singularity 6. They give them money. They're expecting return on that. So not only do they control the money within Singularity 6, but even if you don't know and you don't think this is true, they also control how the funding goes into Palia, and they control the microtransactions in Palia. You're probably thinking, Kyle, you're insane. They do not control the funding in Palia and the microtransactions. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Because if Singularity 6 is not making money within Palia, Daybreak Games or Enad Global 7 has the right to make decisions based on how much money they should be making. So, for example, the microtransactions we have in Palia now, they're pretty tame, right? They're not crazy. They're not game-breaking. Daybreak Games is going to change that. Whether or not you think that, they're going to. This game has to make money in order to stay alive. And it is an unfortunate thing, but it's the truth. This is why I've been saying, give Singularity 6 your money, because that's the only way this game stays alive. And Daybreak Games is going to flood Palia with microtransactions. They control the financials, they control the funding, they control what Singularity 6 can put into the game and what they can't put into the game. So if you're like requesting a feature to Singularity 6, odds are that's not going to be in the game. It has to benefit the players. Well, it doesn't have to benefit the players. It has to benefit Singularity 6 and Daybreak Games. If it doesn't get put in. That's just so unfortunate and true. It's just not going to happen. That's the sad truth, is that Daybreak Games now controls all the money. They control how things are done in the game, how players can buy things. It's going to be a whole thing. And I don't know the extent of what Daybreak Games is planning on doing with that. I'm worried. I'm so worried. So we'll see what happens in the near future, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to show like how people are going to play. It's going to show how many people are still going to be playing the game. It's going to be a nightmare, but I hope we get through it, man. I really do. Now, moving on to my next point here. There was only one positive from the acquisition, and this is the God's honest truth. There was nothing else that's... Dude, the only positive from this acquisition, and people have mentioned it, and I believe it, the game is still up. It's still alive. Singularity 6 is still alive. That is the only positive, is that the game isn't dead. There's nothing else that's positive about this acquisition other than that. Daybreak Games saved Palia from its doom, which is probably gonna be its downfall in the end of all things, because we know, I know how the story ends. Freemers, you know how the story ends. People who don't know Daybreak Games, you probably don't know how this ends, but how it's gonna end is Palia is probably going to shut down in the near future. That is what's going to happen. Dude, because every game Daybreak Games manages gets sunk into the ground and dies. That's what happens. They're a studio that kills games. It's how it works. Okay, and another thing I want to bring up, how Singularity 6 decided to spin Daybreak Games' narrative on their history with MMOs. So if we look at the article, which I did talk about, so there's only two lines that really stood out to me when I first read the article, but Daybreak Games Enad Global 7, known for publishing and supporting some of the world's most popular and successful online multiplayer franchises. That's a lie, because none of those games are successful. EverQuest, H1Z1, Lord of the Rings Online, and more. None of them are successful. They're dying or already dead. So that's one thing they've tried to spin the narrative on. And then, of course, the one that pissed me off the most is Daybreak Games has a proven track record of building gaming communities that last for decades. False. Three Realms only lasted 5 years. Same with a bunch of other titles that they've worked on. H1Z1, it's dead in the ground. They have a proven track record of ruining their games. So Singularity 6 is trying to spin the narrative on Daybreak Games, which is so crazy because it's nothing but negativity on Daybreak Games' side. They're trying to be positive about this whole thing, but realistically, little Timmy went to daddy and mommy for money, and daddy and mommy control how Timmy spends that money. That's how that works. Anyone who thinks this is a positive whole acquisition, it's not. I know there was like one streamer that said this was a positive. I mean, what are you talking about, man? That, again, some people don't know Daybreak Games' history, right? They don't, and man, I don't like that Singularity 6 tried to spin the narrative, but I feel like they had to for press, and if they were to, write something negative about Daybreak Games will drop them immediately, and there goes the game. So they had to, but I'm just putting it out there that they're trying to spin the narrative, and that what they were saying there, not true at all. So don't believe what they were saying. You got to know their history to understand, like, none of that's true. And now, to kind of end the video and wrap things up, I want to talk about the future of Palia. So my thoughts on this is, I mean, dude, we're kind of in a unknown, like, time in Palia where we don't know what's going on. We don't know how the game is going to go. What I do recommend is you play Palia to your heart's content as long as it is still up. Because like Free Realms, it might shut down. And the reason I say it might shut down is because Daybreak Games run their games into the ground. Even though it's not their game, they are managing the funding on it. So to kind of talk about that is, I do think Palia is going to face, like, it's going to face some hard times. It's going to face some hardships. If this game is still up within the next year, like, I'd be shocked. If this game outlives Free Realms, that would be crazy. But I do think the game is it's going to shut down within the next year. I feel like I don't want to say that, but I'm going to spend all my time playing Palia that I can manage. I'm going to try and get my house done. I'm going to try and wrap things up that I need to get done in Palia before the inevitable shutdown. Inevitable, yeah, it's going to happen. That's what I think. I don't think Palia is going to stay up because of Daybreak Games, because of Singularity 6's, they're not being transparent at all. Like, if anything, they're the complete opposite. They're not listening to the community. There's so much that's going wrong with this game that obviously I didn't see, and now I see. It truly, it's a nightmare. And I hope in the future we see this game thrive. I really do, but I don't see that happening because of how Daybreak Games tends to operate with their titles. So, just so you guys know, like, I love this game a lot, and I want to see it continue. I want to keep doing playthrough episodes on it. I want to keep playing it. But, you know, like Free Realms, I think we've kind of... We've waited so long for a game like this, and this is probably the exact reason why we haven't seen a game like this. So, that's that. But anywho, I'm going to call the video here. Thank you guys for watching. If you did, as always, I appreciate it a ton, and I will see you guys in the next video. And, yeah. Goodbye.